World records are meant to show what people can do. These 7 stories reveal what can happen when people push too far in pursuit of one.
From a man pulling a full-size pickup truck with hooks through his back to a woman forcing a fifth sword down her throat.
Hi, you are back on Last Memories.
It was May 9th, 2020. Behind a motorcycle repair shop outside Tucson, Arizona, a cracked parking lot sloped gently toward a drainage ditch on one side. Ricky Darnell was 36, and he had spent more than a decade as a body piercer before getting into suspension and skin hook performance at small conventions and private shows. For a world record attempt, he planned to pull a full-size pickup truck across the lot using 6 hooks set through the skin of his upper back, heavier than any vehicle he had pulled before. The truck was in neutral, so Ricky only had to overcome its rolling resistance, not its full weight. Still, it put a serious load on skin that was never meant to be an anchor point. Hooks can share that force during a smooth pull, but the second a tire catches or the strap jerks, one hook can take far more than the others.
Some stunts look difficult, but this looked dangerous before Rick even took the first step. Human skin against a full-size truck?
Ricky normally used 8 hooks for pulls like this, spaced across a wider area of his back. That day he used 6, positioned higher across his shoulders instead of lower across the broader muscle. He liked how it looked for the shots he wanted, and he figured his conditioning would cover the difference. An assistant helping set up pointed out the truck was parked close to a raised seam in the pavement and suggested repositioning it. Ricky waved it off, said the first stretch of any pull was always the hardest part, regardless of where they started. Getting a machine that heavy moving from a dead stop takes more out of a hook than most of the pull afterward. That first jolt of resistance is where I would be watching closest, long before anything visibly goes wrong. The truck began rolling. Slow at first, the strap alternating between taut and slightly slack as the tires crossed small dips in the concrete. About 15 feet in, the front tire reached the raised seam Ricky had been warned about. He dug in and leaned harder, trying to power through it the way he had powered through the slow start. The tire caught against the seam for a beat, resisting just long enough that Ricky's weight was already committed forward. Then it rolled over all at once, and the slack he had been leaning into vanished in a single motion. The force did not distribute. It slammed into the hook nearest his left shoulder blade first, and the skin around it split wider than a hook tear normally would under a steady pull. With that point suddenly gone, the remaining hooks took on weight they were not spaced to handle, and a second point began giving way almost immediately after the first. Ricky's upper body was thrown backward out of sync with his own legs. He stumbled as the toe strap suddenly went slack beneath him, and he dropped hard onto one knee, catching himself with a hand flat against the pavement. The driver spotted him going down and stopped the truck within a few feet. The people nearby held the strap clear of his back, without disturbing the hooks that were still holding. Ricky answered when they spoke to him at first, but his voice quickly weakened. His shirt darkened far beyond the torn area. The color drained from his face, and his hands went cold before he lost consciousness. The lot sat behind the shop, away from the main road, delaying the emergency response. Ricky died from blood loss and shock after the hooks tore through the skin across his back. The strap and hooks were checked afterward and found intact. His death was ruled an accident, with the raised seam in the pavement identified as the point where the pull went wrong. No record was awarded. In Alabama, a freight yard worker set up beneath a 400-pound swinging bag and tried to stop it with his bare hands, again and again. It was October 17th, 2018. The warehouse sat outside Birmingham, Alabama, tucked between a freight depot and a row of shuttered machine shops. Concrete floor, steel rafters, one loading door left open for airflow. Paul Birch was 32, working long shifts at a freight yard during the week and training for local strongman events on nights and weekends. He was attempting a world record for the most consecutive catches of a 400-pound pendulum bag, stopping it clean each time before it swung back for another hit.
Simple to explain, brutal to actually do. A bag that heavy is dangerous enough sitting still, and in the air, being strong is not enough. Get the timing wrong, and that force lands somewhere you are not ready for.
Paul had been training with the rig for months, working up slowly from a lighter bag. In practice, he usually stopped somewhere around 12 or 15 catches. His best had been 17, and that had taken everything out of him. For this attempt, he wanted 30.
Sounds like a manageable jump when you hear the number, right? Just 13 more. But past a certain point, you are not really testing strength anymore.
You are testing whether your timing holds up once your legs start shaking and your grip starts slipping. Paul had worked a full shift the day before and trained hard all week with barely a day off. His right shoulder had been sore enough to tape during an earlier session, though the tape was gone by the time he started. The first several catches looked clean, steady stance, loud breathing, but nothing off. By 15, he started resetting his feet between swings, and one training partner later said his grip looked looser on the chain, like his forearms were giving out first. At 18, he beat his personal best, and barely nodded before letting the bag swing back again. The next few catches got rougher. He caught one high against his chest instead of low through his arms. On another, his boot slid slightly on dust near the open bay door. He caught himself both times and kept going.
Then came catch 23. The bag came back toward him. Paul stepped in, but his left foot landed a little too far forward.
His left hand touched the bag first. His right arm came around just late enough that his body was still angled toward the open door instead of squared up to take the hit. The bag caught him across the left side of his chest, and the sound of it landing was flat and heavy, nothing like the earlier catches. His body moved with it for a second, then his foot went out from under him. He hit the concrete hard as the bag swung on past. One friend grabbed the chain before it could swing back into him, while another rushed to Paul's side. He stayed conscious but couldn't get off the concrete, each breath shorter than the last. There was no visible wound, only bruising beginning to spread across his ribs as his breathing grew more strained. The warehouse's remote location delayed responders, and by the time they arrived, Paul was barely breathing. Paul died from severe internal injuries, bleeding inside his chest and abdomen that had started the moment he hit the ground and never stopped. The equipment checked out fine afterward. Chain, frame, every bolt in place. Investigators relied on statements from his two friends and ruled his death an accident tied to the fall. The case was closed. The 23 catches were never recognized as a record. Just outside Las Cruces, New Mexico, scorpions were being lifted one at a time toward a man's face for a record attempt. It was August 23rd, 2021. A rented studio outside Las Cruces, New Mexico, had bare concrete floors, bright lights, and a folding table holding a clear container of desert scorpions. Benji Denton was 29. He worked part-time at an exotic pet supply store and kept scorpions at home. He had been stung before, usually on the hands or forearms, and had taken those smaller reactions as proof that he could handle more. He was attempting a world record for the most scorpion stings across the face within 1 hour. Benji had marked his target count on a sheet beside the timer. After each sting, he looked toward that number before doing anything else, treating the next sting like proof he could still handle it. The scorpions he used were not the most dangerous species in the world, but that did not make this safe. Every sting delivered venom into tissue already inflamed from the last one. More than one sting can cause sweating, vomiting, numbness, muscle twitching, fast heart rate, and breathing trouble. Stings around the mouth and jaw carry another risk. Swelling does not stay neatly at the sting site.
Every sting added to that number, but it also added more venom. At some point, those two things were going to catch up with him.
The first sting went into his right cheek. He jerked his head away, blinked hard, then sat still as the next scorpion was brought over. The second landed under his jaw. The third went near his left cheekbone. By the sixth sting, his face had started to swell on one side. He kept wiping at his mouth because saliva had begun collecting at the corner of his lips. His hands trembled when he reached for water, and he had to use both of them to get the bottle cap loose. He drank only a little, then set the bottle down without tightening the cap. The numbness had started around his lips, and when he tried to wipe his mouth, his fingers missed the corner on the first pass. When the assistant suggested pausing, Benji looked at the unfinished count sheet and signaled to continue. The next sting landed close to his lower lip. His whole body jolted. He pressed both hands to his face and remained bent forward in the chair. When he lifted his head, one eyelid had begun to droop, and he was breathing through his mouth. The attempt continued, but slower. He could no longer keep his head still when the scorpions were brought close. His face had become swollen across both cheeks, changing the shape of his mouth. Sweat soaked the collar of his shirt. His fingers curled and uncurled against his knees as he tried to hold himself upright. After another sting, Benji stood up too quickly. His legs gave out, and he fell onto the floor beside the table. The container tipped, and several scorpions scattered across the concrete. Benji tried to push himself up once, but his arms gave out and he dropped back down. The swelling had spread beneath his jaw and into his neck, making every breath louder than the last. His jaw was clenched. His tongue had begun to swell, and each breath made a rough, high sound in his throat. He clawed at the collar of his shirt, then brought both hands to his neck. The assistant called for help, while another person cleared the scorpions from the floor. Benji was still trying to pull air through his swollen throat, and the people around him could do little except keep him upright and wait. Benji's breathing became shallow. His lips turned bluish, and then his body went still. He later died from respiratory failure caused by a severe systemic reaction to repeated scorpion envenomation. The examination documented sting sites across his cheeks, jaw, and lower face, along with swelling of the tongue and upper airway. The timer, count sheet, and scorpion container were collected afterward. Officials closed the case as an accident. The record attempt was never accepted.
I think people sometimes mistake getting away with something before for proof they can keep getting away with it. That is a dangerous lesson to learn from the wrong kind of stunt.
The next attempt took place in a Colorado field where a man planned to launch himself from a human cannon and land in a net at a record distance. It was June 14th, 2019. An open field outside Grand Junction, Colorado, had a steel launch barrel at one end and a landing net stretched across the far side. At 28, Colin Keats had spent years working on traveling stunt shows, including regular human cannonball launches at county fairs. His normal flights were shorter, using a large net with room to spare on every side. He was attempting a world record human cannonball distance using more air pressure and a much narrower margin at the net than he had ever used before. The cannon did not fire a person with gunpowder. Compressed air drove a padded carriage through the barrel, then released the performer into the air at a fixed angle. Once he left it, his landing depended on the barrel position, the pressure setting, and the conditions across the field. I mean, imagine knowing that every adjustment has to be right before you even climb inside. There is nothing to fix once you are in the air. The crew made several checks before the final run. A weighted test carriage traveled along the expected arc. Then Colin completed 2 lower power practice launches. Both landed inside the net, but close to the right-hand side. The barrel was adjusted slightly left before the full distance attempt. Wind had started coming across the field in brief gusts. The net crew had no way to adjust once Colin left the barrel. They could only watch his line against the support frame and hoped the wind held steady for a few more seconds. It was not strong enough to stop the event, but the gusts did not stay consistent. The crew had wind readings at the barrel, not across every part of the flight path, and the net was now set farther away than it had been for the practice launches.
I would be nervous the second those earlier landings started drifting toward one side. With a stunt like this, close does not really count. You either land in the middle of the net or the edge becomes a hard piece of equipment waiting for you.
Colin climbed into the barrel and lay back on the padded carriage. The harness went over his shoulders and hips, holding him in place until the carriage released. The air system pressurized behind him. The net crew took their positions. The launch sent him out clean. He rose above the field, arms close to his body, following the line set by the barrel. For the first part of the flight, he remained over the markers. Then a gust caught him from the left and pushed his body toward the net's right support frame. The change was small enough that people near the cannon may not have noticed it. The crew standing by the net did. They watched him come down toward the outside edge, with no way to move the frame, shift the net, or reach him before he arrived. Colin hit the upper edge of the net near the support frame. The webbing caught part of him, but the rest of his body passed over the border and struck the ground beside the padded landing area. The net crew reached him immediately. His helmet had split along one side, and he was still for several seconds before one arm moved weakly against the grass. They kept him flat and cleared the area around him while someone called for help from the field. Standing beside the net, the crew could see the right side of his chest moving differently from the left, each breath shallow and uneven. He stopped responding before responders reached the property. Colin died from severe chest and head injuries sustained when he struck the net frame and ground outside the padded landing zone. Investigators found no mechanical failure, and the launch was ruled an accident caused by changing wind conditions. The event was halted following the incident, and the distance was never recognized as a record. Near El Paso, Texas, the next record attempt involved a machine built to spin a man hard enough to pull blood away from his brain. It was November 6th, 2022. A private industrial unit outside El Paso, Texas, held a custom centrifuge with a steel arm, a padded capsule, and a control booth behind a clear barrier. Leon Vickers was 33, working as a stunt rigger and fitness coach while chasing increasingly extreme endurance challenges on the side. He had rented time in the centrifuge several times before, building up from shorter, lower force runs. This was his world record attempt for the highest sustained G-force in a human centrifuge, pushing beyond every earlier test. He had blacked out briefly during a lower force run before and recovered when the machine slowed. That history mattered because the operator had seen Leon lose consciousness before and had learned to expect him to come back. A centrifuge creates force by spinning a person around a fixed point. As speed rises, blood is pulled away from the head and toward the lower body. People usually notice their vision narrowing first. After that, they can lose consciousness without much warning.
The dangerous part is that a blackout does not automatically stop the machine. Somebody outside has to notice.
Leon had reached a lower level safely in the past. For the final run, he changed two things at once: the speed and the time at peak force. The operator suggested a shorter hold at the new speed first. Leon wanted the full run.
Unlike the earlier stunts, there was no crowd close enough to step in if he went down. Leon would be sealed inside a spinning capsule, out at the end of that arm.
The capsule had a headset and a camera, but the camera showed only his face and upper body. An emergency switch was mounted beside his right hand. He could reach it while awake. Once the force became high enough, lifting an arm against it would be difficult. and after a blackout, impossible. Leon was secured with shoulder restraints, a lap belt, and a helmet. The arm started turning, and the capsule swung outward as the speed increased in stages. During the lower part of the run, Leon answered through the headset, but his words got shorter as the arm picked up speed. His eyelids fluttered on the monitor, then closed briefly before opening again. The operator held the speed, and Leon answered one more check in a weak and delayed voice. The planned peak setting had not been reached yet. When the arm accelerated again, Leon's head pressed farther back into the padding. His right hand lifted off his lap, drifted toward the emergency switch, then fell away. A few seconds later, his eyes stayed closed. The operator had seen Leon go quiet before and expected the usual recovery when the speed came down. This time, the right shoulder restraint started slipping while Leon was still unconscious. His upper body twisted against the lap belt. The next time the capsule came around, his shoulder struck the restraint frame. The camera shook. On the following rotation, the side of his helmet hit the padded wall inside the capsule. The operator hit the shutdown immediately, but the steel arm could not stop in place. It continued turning as the motor slowed, and Leon's upper body kept twisting against the restraints. The loose shoulder strap gave him just enough movement for his shoulder and helmet to strike the restraint frame and side padding again before the speed finally bled away. When the centrifuge stopped, the capsule door remained locked until the arm was fully secured. The operator waited through the last few seconds, then opened it. Leon was slumped forward in the harness. One shoulder hung lower than the other, and blood had collected along the side of his helmet. He did not respond when the operator touched him. A call was made from the control booth. The unit sat behind a security gate in an industrial area, and the entrance had to be opened before responders could reach the building. Leon died from severe head and chest injuries sustained after the shoulder restraint slipped during the high G run. Investigators concluded that the loose restraint, combined with the prolonged high G exposure, allowed repeated impacts inside the capsule that caused his fatal injuries. The inspection found the shoulder strap had been incorrectly threaded through part of the restraint buckle, allowing it to loosen under sustained force. The centrifuge itself had worked as designed. The incident was classified as an accidental death during a private endurance attempt. No record was awarded. At a Missouri County fair, one man planned to keep breathing flames until he set his longest run yet. It was July 29, 2017. A county fair outside Springfield, Missouri, had a small wooden stage between food trailers and livestock barns. Warm air moved through the tent from a fan near the side opening. Levi Krause was 27, working the local fair circuit with juggling, sideshow routines, and fire breathing. He had spent the previous few weeks trying to stretch his runs longer, adding more bursts before stepping away from the flame. That night, he was attempting a world record for the longest continuous fire-breathing run. Fire-breathing is not about holding a flame in the mouth. The performer sprays fuel outward in a fine mist, then it ignites in front of them. When it works, the fire stays away from the face. But the fuel is still sitting in the mouth, and every burst needs a breath before the next one.
If the mist blows back at the wrong moment, it can enter the nose or airway instead of going out into the flame.
Levi had switched to a thinner fuel mixture earlier that month. It made wider flames and was easier to spray, but it also created a finer mist. He had been coughing after rehearsals, blaming dry air, food trailer smoke, and the long fair schedule. The fan near the tent had been aimed toward the audience. but someone turned it toward the side of the stage to cool the people waiting nearby. The breeze now crossed directly in front of Levi. The first bursts looked clean. He leaned back, sprayed the fuel forward, and fire rolled above the front row. He reset, took another mouthful, and kept going. As the run continued, he started taking quicker breaths between bursts. The fan caught the outer edge of one flame and bent it sideways. Levi shifted his stance, waited for the flame to clear, then kept going. The next burst did not go forward the way it should have. The fuel left his mouth in a broken spray. The fan pushed part of the flame back toward him, and it flashed across his lower face before he turned away. He dropped the container and covered his mouth, the skin around his lips already red and blistering. Then he inhaled sharply through the coughing. A helper started toward him from the side, but Levi lifted a hand and picked up the container. He stood there coughing for a moment before straightening up. He did not end the routine there. The remaining bursts were shorter and lower. He coughed between them, wiped his mouth with his wrist, and took longer to prepare each one. From the crowd, it may have looked like part of the act, but anyone close enough could hear the coughing was getting worse. Levi was still able to walk away from the stage. That was what fooled everyone nearby. He rinsed his mouth, sat behind the tent, and spent the next hour coughing while the fair wound down around him. Later that night, back in his camper, the coughing kept waking him. By midnight, he could no longer lie down. The fuel in his lungs had caused enough swelling and fluid buildup that he had to stay sitting upright to breathe. Before sunrise, a performer in the next camper saw Levi's door open and his light on. Levi was on the floor beside the bed, unable to stand. Each breath made a wet, rattling sound, and pale foam came into his mouth when he coughed. A call was made from the fairground. Levi died the following day from chemical pneumonitis after aspirating fuel during the attempt. The examination found severe chemical inflammation and fluid damage throughout both lungs. Witnesses placed the critical moment during the stage routine when the fan pushed fuel mist back toward him. The death was ruled accidental, and the attempt was never recognized as a record. Fire breathing looks dangerous for the obvious reason, the flames. But the part that stays hidden can be much worse. In Portland, Maine, a sword swallower was about to attempt 5 blades at once, one more than she had ever managed before. It was March 15th, 2023. A circus arts festival in Portland, Maine, filled a small hall with black curtains, warm stage lights, and rows of folding chairs close to the stage. Nadia Holland was 34 and had made a living from sword swallowing at small festivals and private events for more than a decade. 3 blades had always been her limit. The festival set was built around one question. Could she set a world record by swallowing 5 blades at once? 2 more than her usual limit.
Of all things a person could put in their mouth for a record attempt, 5 steel blades have to be the near top of the list for things I would never want to see up close.
Sword swallowing is not a trick where blades fold around the body. The performer has to align the mouth, throat, and esophagus in a nearly straight line, then guide the blade down without it catching against tissue. One blade leaves little room for error. With several blades already in place, there is even less room to adjust the head, neck, or shoulders if something starts to go wrong. Nadia had rehearsed with 4 blades during the week before the festival. The 5th blade was slightly wider near the handle and did not sit as cleanly beside the others. A performer backstage suggested leaving it out. Nadia had already set the 5-blade attempt as the headline of her set, and she kept it in. It did not leave the same room between the other blades. That meant a small adjustment that had worked with 4 could become a problem with 5. The first blade went in smoothly. Nadia stood still at the center of the stage, chin lifted, shoulders held low. The second followed, then the third. By the time the fourth blade was in place, the handles were pressed tightly together at her mouth. She paused longer than she had after the earlier blades, fingers shifting on the grip as she made room for the fifth. She picked it up and positioned it between the others. The blade went down partway, then stopped. From the audience, the pause looked controlled. The performers at the side of the stage saw her shoulders tense. Nadia adjusted her head slightly and tried again. The fifth blade moved lower, stopped again, and Nadia held still for a moment longer than she normally would. Then the cough came. Her hands clamped around the handles. The blades shifted together. Nadia pulled the fifth blade back partway, but her body jerked forward before it was out. The blade scraped against the others as she lowered them to the table. She kept one hand around the table edge for balance. Her face had gone pale under the stage lights, and she swallowed once, then stopped as if even that hurt too much. She stayed standing for several seconds with one hand pressed to the base of her throat. Then she bent forward and started coughing into her palm. At first, there was only saliva. Then, thin red blood appeared between her fingers. An assistant moved her behind the curtain. Nadia could still walk, but she kept stopping to brace herself against the wall. Her breathing had become fast and shallow. She pointed at the center of her chest, then pressed both hands against it. Within minutes, the skin above her collarbone had begun to puff outward. When the assistant touched it, the skin made a faint crackling sensation under the fingers. Nadia tried to take a deeper breath, but it ended in a harsh cough. More blood came from her mouth. Her voice became weak, then disappeared completely as she sat down against the wall. By the time help reached the hall, Nadia was lying on her side, pulling in short breaths that barely lifted her chest. Blood stained the front of her shirt. The swelling at her neck had spread upward toward her jaw. Nadia died from a perforation of the esophagus and upper chest caused during the fifth blade insertion. The injury allowed air and blood to enter the chest cavity, leading to respiratory failure and internal bleeding. The blades and witness accounts were reviewed afterward. Her death was ruled accidental. The 5-blade attempt was never recognized as a record.
By this point, you have seen fire, venom, crushing force, and machines. Somehow, 5 blades on a silent stage still feels like its own kind of nightmare.